Hi, I'm Chris Schaafsma. I race a Volkswagen GTI in H production. I was introduced to the SCCA in the 1980s when my uncle was running a Formula Ford in Southern California. I've been running this car for about 20 years in improved touring and then eventually H production. Over those years, I've made a lot of mistakes along the way that taught me lessons and made me faster. And eventually, I was able to win the National Championship last year in H production. I'll share a few of those mistakes with you, and maybe it'll be a little bit easier for you not having to make them on your own. First, let's talk about prep, right? These are the things you do before you even leave for the track. And what I found over the years is prep is actually where a lot of your success comes from. The mistake that I made and made over and over was rushing my prep, not leaving myself enough time to get everything ready the way I needed to at the track and leaving things to do at the track. A great example is last year here at the June Sprints, after our first session, we had a clutch failure. So we pulled the transmission out, we looked at the clutch, it needed to be replaced. We also noticed that there was a ton of metal in the trans fluid. So we put the spare transmission in that was marked with the same gear ratio, and we thought we were going to be fine. We start the race and I realized that it didn't have a differential in it. It was an open diff. The mistake I made was I was rushing to load the trailer and I grabbed the wrong transmission and didn't have it marked the way I needed to. So it cost me a chance to race for the win. I had a great race for third place against my friend Greg, but now we stamp numbers on the cases and make sure that we know exactly what's in each box. So the next thing I want to talk about is mistakes in setup. And this one is a little bit more subtle, but basically when you're making setup changes on the car, you have to be making them based on everything else being the same, right? It's making one change at a time and knowing what you're improving. The example I'll give is if I'm making setup changes in shocks and springs because of a lack of grip, but I'm running on old tires with way less grip, and then I put on a nice fresh set of tires, I'll go out on track and the car will be really tight. I won't be able to turn the kinds of lap times that my competitors are turning. So the way that I've solved that problem is I just take really meticulous notes of every tire. When I get it, I give it a number. I track how many heat cycles it has, I track the amount that it wears on every track, and I keep notes on what the air pressure was, what track I ran it on. That way I can always refer back to what the setup was, and if I'm making a change, I can go back and look at what tires that were like that and how they behaved. So for instance, today we just made a rear spring change because this track has a different amount of grip than it used to have, and we were able to look at notes from last year with a really similar tire to decide what we wanted there. Okay, so now we can talk about mistakes behind the wheel, which I'm sure we're all familiar with. I've learned things over the years that were both over being too aggressive or maybe even being a little bit too passive. I'll give you a couple of examples that are related. At the 2020 runoffs at Road America, I found myself in the lead coming out of turn 1, lap 1. And as we went around the track, I thought I had a real chance to break away from the group and get a chance to race for my national championship. I was over aggressive as I went through the kink on that first lap on cold tires, ended up crashing myself out of the race and didn't even have an opportunity to compete for more than one half lap. Fast forward to the 2022 runoffs at VIR, I was having an outstanding race with Steve Sargis on a damp, slightly dry, slightly damp track at VIR. We had wet grass off the track, and as we entered the climbing S's, I thought that I saw Steve right off of my right corner before I turned in for the first right-hander. I elected to be a little extra cautious. I went to the left side of the apex curb, went off track, possibly could have thrown my race away, but I knew that I would throw both of our races away if we touched. It worked out. I was able to then race hard with Steve for the rest of the event and ended up coming up with a win. Those are a few of the mistakes that I've had over the years. Trust me, there's a lot more. But the thing to remember is most races ended up being decided by someone's mistake. So if you make a point to learn and improve from every mistake you make, you'll make yourself more competitive and you'll find yourself more successful on the track. Good luck.